Good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to the next session. It's a panel discussion on the theme New Literacies, what, why, and how. I think we had a very, very interesting discussion in the first round on the Gen Z and the challenges of skilling Gen Z, and also the concept of lifelong learning. To push the boundaries of this discussion forward, new literacies is a theme that we have taken up because, as you know, some years back, maybe less than a decade back, the concept of literacy was linked to reading and writing, the ability to read and write. Very interestingly, now with the 21st century skills being dialogued, the concept of literacy is now kind of broadened. Why it has broadened, I think, in my understanding, three things have become important. Number one is this entire new economy that has come into play, the information age that we are in, that has pushed this need for education to build in new forms of literacy. Having said that, I think the second point I want to emphasize is the importance of what Sir Ken Robinson has told in his TED Talk very, very eloquently, where he says that we are all in the need to educate our children for the future, and we do not know what the future is going to be. We really don't know what the future is. We don't know what technology they are going to use. We don't know what their challenges are going to be, and yet we are educating them. We've taken this task or the responsibility of educating them. And I think pandemic has thrown this curveball and showcased to us how we need to be prepared for something that we have never, ever prepared for. And that is why new literacies become important. And to engage a dialogue on this, I have a very, very eminent panel here. I'm very, very pleased to introduce to you a very young panel, chronologically age, very young panel, because I think they are better in bringing out the importance of the new literacies and the different themes of new literacy. Let me take the privilege of introducing them. First of all is Ashwini N.V, Miss Ashwini N.V. Ashwini is the founder of Mukta Foundation, which is an organization committed to prevent interpersonal violence and to promote mental health. She is a counseling psychologist with practice and research interest in the area of intervention and prevention of interpersonal violence in various contexts. She was recognized as one of the 100 leaders under 30 from across the globe for her idea that titled Focus Formula to Foster Mental Health in Low and Middle Income Countries at the St. Gallen Symposium, Switzerland in 2015. In the year 2019, she did something amazing. She directed a campaign titled Child Safety National Priority, for which she traveled non-stop 90 days from January 1st to April 1st, 2019 to all the 29 states and 3 union territories to conduct over 150 training sessions on prevention of child sexual abuse, and thereby becoming the first person in the country to do so. So welcome to you, Ashwini. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
The next speaker that we have in the panel is Ms. Nayantara Kurpad. Nayantara Kurpad is currently a doctoral student at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. Her research area is something very interesting, and it lies in the intersection of cognitive psychology and education. Specifically, she focuses on science of learning in the classroom. Nayantara strives to understand the whys and hows of learning by asking students to think about their own learning processes. Nayantara, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much.
The third panelist we have today is Ms. Rekha Mishra. Rekha Mishra is currently the Deputy Head of Academics at Mount View International Primary School. She has been an English teacher for the last 18 years. She has degrees in communicative English, diploma in creative teaching, master's degree in English literature, and B.Ed. She has a broad spectrum of teaching experience, both in the CBSE, IGCSE levels of curriculum. In all the schools that she was a part of, she was involved in planning and implementing the teacher training programs. She is an accredited program leader for the Cambridge International Certificate in Teaching and Training. A warm welcome to you, Rekha. So I think we can start our discussion. Each one of you would get around 6 to 7 minutes to make your opening statements, and then we can have a discussion among ourselves. Maybe I will raise a few questions, and probably it's also okay for the panelists to raise questions among themselves. And then we will throw open the discussion for the larger audience, the last 10 minutes of it. I think we can begin. Ashwini, it is over to you. You can, the floor is yours, Ashwini. Ashwini?
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, yes. Yes, yes.
Is my voice?
It's coming through.
So about a framework at Mukta Foundation in order to evolve training, especially pertaining to ability mental health. This framework of literacy, we call it SMILE literacy. Now, SMILE, it's an acronym, S-M-I-L-E. It's a set of 5 literacies that we believe must be promoted in order to prevent abuse and promote community mental health. And what better than starting early? So therefore, I'm going to contextualize my talk to how could we be promoting these literacies in schools. Now, as I said, SMILE is an acronym. S stands for safety skills. How could we train students, children, to protect themselves and at the same time to ensure that they do not become threat to others' safety? Now, talking about safety skills, we usually discuss it in the context of 6 forms of abuse. The first one is physical abuse, the bodily safety, verbal abuse. Sometimes we are all aware of how words can bruise an individual far more deeply than, the bodily hurt. Emotional abuse, sexual abuse. Now, talking about safety skills in the context of sexual abuse, not just contact forms of abuse, but also non-contact forms of abuse. There is a need for us to talk about non-contact forms of abuse also. Then we also have financial abuse, and given how much we engage online, also technological abuse. So the first literacy that I feel we must promote is the safety skills literacy pertaining to all these 6 forms of abuse. The second one is M, which stands for mental health literacy. Now, I understand mental health is such a broad domain, but then I wish to highlight on at least how 3 aspects of community mental health that we really need to be promoting very early on. The first one is an awareness of the symptoms of at least common mental health disorders, be it depression, be it anxiety. These are all common mental health concerns which the awareness needs to be promoted. We understand how stigma pertaining to mental health is so intense, and stigma thrives on silence. So if we could promote awareness on mental health and at the same time help seeking behaviors, I feel that would make immense contribution to the generations to come. The second point in mental health literacy that we really need to be focusing on is psychological first aid. We're all aware of physical first aid, right? How when there is an injury, way before we take the child or a person to the doctor, the little bit of the bandage, the cotton, that's needed. Similarly, what about our psychological injuries? Trauma, anxiety that we experience on a daily basis. Can we promote awareness among children very early on how to provide psychological first aid to themselves as well as to others? The third main point in mental health literacy is also about the fundamental mental health self-care. These are challenging times. So can we promote resilience by building in awareness about the fundamentals of mental health self-care? So this is mental health literacy. Let's move on to the third component in SMILE literacy, which is I, and that stands for interpersonal skills. A lot of times, violence could have very well been prevented in communities if people only had interpersonal skills, be it conflict management, be it skills of empathy, assertiveness, not just for abuse prevention, but given that we are all relational beings, it matters so much even for our mental health well-being. So for example, look at assertiveness. What is assertiveness? Do I have the capability to ensure I don't violate others' rights, and at the same time, I do not allow others to violate mine, as opposed to submissiveness and aggressiveness? In submissiveness, what happens? We don't violate others' rights, but when others tend to violate ours, we don't have the skills, capabilities to prevent that, defend ourselves. And aggressiveness is the opposite of it, which is we violate others' rights, but when others violate ours, of course, we don't let it.
Ashwini is having some technical glitch. Ashwini? I think Ashwini is having some technical glitch. We will.
I think.
Can you?
I'm sorry.
Are you okay now? Is your connectivity okay? We lost you for a minute. Yeah.
Okay.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I think I was at legal literacy, and that's where I got dropped off, I guess. Now, legal literacy is, can we bring in fundamental knowledge on law, legal rights, legal responsibilities, legal awareness about legal resources that are available, and also about citizen activism, maybe the PIL or RTIs. And when we start that very early on, I think we could
Yeah. I think we seem to be having a technical glitch with Ashwini's presentation. Maybe I will ask Ashwini. I'm sorry. I will step over and I'll ask Nayantara to start her presentation, and then we'll get back to you for the last E of the SMILE. Okay. Yes, Nayantara, over to you.
Thank you so much for having me here this morning. It's morning here. That's why I think it's, I'm used to saying this morning, but good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see everyone. And thank you, Ashwini, for introducing the SMILE literacy to us. I'm sure we'll all end up smiling at the end of it, and that's the motive of the acronym. Today, I'm here to introduce a literacy to you, which we call as metacognition. Metacognition is thinking about your thinking processes. So you might be wondering, in the context of a learner, it's basically thinking about your learning process. Now, let's begin by looking at a scenario itself. Let's think of a time where a student came up to you and they asked you, how do you think I did on this exam? Now, you might throw this question back at them and ask them to think again, like, how do you think you did on this exam? The student might say, I think I did very well. Or a student might say, hey, I think I'm failing in this exam. Now, this is a question that you're asking to bring about their metacognitive judgments. So what we do in cognitive psychology research is we ask this question of prediction right before their exam. So we ask them to think about how they're going to prepare on an upcoming exam or how they're going to do on an upcoming exam. Now, when we ask this question, we are asking about their future performance. So we're asking students, hey, how do you think you're going to do on an upcoming exam? And then they might say, I'm going to get a 99, I'm going to get a 95, or I'm going to get an 85. Now, why are these students throwing out these random numbers at you? That's a question of interest to us as researchers. These numbers are actually coming based on their past performance. They might have gotten a 95 in an exam that they just did, or they might have failed that exam, and that's why they're saying they might just get a 75 on an upcoming exam. So they might be basing these numbers on their past exam performance. Or some students might desire to get a good grade on a future exam, right? We all want to get good grades. So the student might say, I think I'll get an 85 when actually that student is only getting a 75. Now, I think this is an issue here, and that's why researchers like me and several others in the area of metacognition and learning are trying to address these issues. When we see this research in the classroom, we see that low performers are specifically the ones who are overestimating or overconfident in their performance. Now, this is an issue because when low performers overestimate their performance on an upcoming exam, they might not end up studying as well as they need to, right, to prepare for the exam. Because they might be feeling, hey, I'm anyway going to get an 85 or a 90. Why do I need to study any more? Or why do I need to study any better? And that's why they might have flawed learning processes. And this process of metacognition, where we think about our own learning process, is very important, specifically in the context of low performers. Let me talk about high performers a little bit. On the other hand, high performers, they're actually somewhat underconfident, or they are accurate in their predictions about their marks on an upcoming exam. The reason because they're underconfident, it could be just because societally we're trained to not boast about how we feel about certain things. Like if I'm a high performer and I know I'm going to get 100 out of 100, I'm not going to go out and share it to the world, right? Because everyone is not going to think well of me when I do that. So it might be a societal cause, or it might be a self-protecting factor where they're actually trying to protect themselves and they don't want to share this crucial information that they're actually doing very well, or they're very well calibrated. And that's a term that we use in cognitive psychology, that they're very well calibrated. They know that they're going to do as well as they're going to do on an upcoming exam. Now, the reason I'm emphasizing low performers, high performers is because we've constantly seen in research in the area of metacognition and learning where low performers are always over-predicting their performance on an upcoming exam. They're always over-predicting. They're always thinking they're going to get that B grade when they're actually getting a C grade. And students are often coming up to teachers and instructors and telling them, I think I'm going to do very well on the exam, but they're actually not going to do well. So we need to address this issue at a larger context, right? This issue is addressed basically with a simple question. We ask them, how do you think you're going to do on an upcoming exam, right before their exam? So let's imagine we are all in a classroom where everything's back in normal. We all can be in a classroom, and it's exam time. And in a class, we have several exams, right, in a course. So right before the exam, we give this question to them, to the students, and ask them, how much do you think you're going to do or you're going to get on this exam? And students put in their number saying they're going to get an 85 or a 95. This one data point actually tells us a lot about the student itself. You might be thinking it's a small data point, it's just one question. How do you arrive at this? But this one data point actually tells us whether they are over-predicting their performance or under-predicting. And as educators and as teachers, we can handle this issue by actually looking at their performance and saying, hey, you over-predicted. Is there a reason? Do you think you didn't study well enough? Or do you think you're basing this out of that one exam where you did really well, that one exam performance where you got a 90, you're thinking this is going to be the same as that one? Maybe it's not, right? Because it's different topics, different course material, everything is different. So you want these students to be moving away from the misleading information that they're constantly going back and forth with. You want to help them to actually be better calibrated so that they're actually learning the material that they're supposed to learn. And they're not basing their judgments based on something they desire, but they're basing it something on what they have in front of them, that's their grades. And we want to help these students actually get better with their learning performance and get better by using effective learning strategies, right? Like by using quizzes, by being quizzed all the time, or by getting feedback from their teachers and instructors. We want these to be a formal method in the classroom where they're constantly getting feedback and they're correcting these overconfident judgments. So as educators, what can we do? How can we handle this issue of overconfidence in low performers? We want to give these students feedback. We want to help them say, hey, this previous exam, yes, you did really well, but this upcoming exam, you might not do as well. I mean, you're not going to directly say that, but you're going to say it in a different way by saying these course materials are different from the previous exam. You need to strategize yourself a little better and give them the effective strategies so that they're better calibrated for the upcoming exam. By giving them review quizzes, mock exams, and most importantly, feedback on their performance is how we can actually bring their scores up and not just leave them behind as low performers. So this is the research that I do in the classroom, and this is what we find. And of course, we want to make changes, right? We want to go back and make changes in the classroom and not just leave research to be a part of a journal or a publication. And that's where I think wonderful educators like all of us come in here. And we also want to think about this metacognitive process as a lifelong learning process, right? We want to take it forward in life. It's not that we'll have written exams and we'll have wonderful mentors like all of us being present there all the time to help low performers be better calibrated, but we want them to be better calibrated by themselves by using the school performance to carry it forward into their lives. And how do we do that? That's something we all need to think about. And I can tell you probably 2 ways where we can help them and brainstorm with everybody else the many more ways that are coming from you all as educators. That would be great. So how would we do it? We could probably help them be better calibrated in an exam scenario so that tomorrow, if they are facing with a job prospect, they have an interview coming up, they know whether they're well prepared or not, because they have this training that they're carrying from their school, right? It could be even college admission. Am I going to get into this college because I have done all these requirements and I have a score and everything that will help me get this admission in a college. Or even promotions later in life. Why do I need this promotion? Of course, you got to ask your manager that, right? Why do I need this promotion? No one's going to throw you to the next level without any basis. And that's where you need to think, okay, I've done all these different things. And that's where your metacognition actually plays a very important role. So it's not just in the classroom, it's something that you extract above and beyond. It moves on to your different aspects of life. And this training, once it's strengthened within the classroom, we see that students are generally better calibrated as they move on to different stages of life.
Thank you so much for that insight. Brilliant anecdotal example based on research on how an experiment on learning can be translated into a lifelong learning and a new literacy called metacognitive literacy. Thank you, Nayantara. We'll come back to you. Ashwini, let me hand over the place to Rekha, and then I'll get back to you finally. Rekha, over to you now.
Thank you, ma'am. Hello, everyone. It is, ma'am, am I audible?
Yeah.
Because I have issues with the internet too. All right. Hello, everyone. It's great to be part of this panel, and I've been enjoying listening to all the views that everyone has been putting forward. And I realize that there is so many levels to the new literacies, and I don't think these few hours are going to do justice to the amount we can actually discuss. But a little bit to start with, I'll be focusing on multicultural literacy. I have been working in Malawi, which is a small country in southern Africa. I've been here for the last 8 years, and I've been working in the school for the last 6 years. And this has been a wonderful experience in terms of course, since we are talking about multicultural literacy, it definitely is an eye-opener for me in terms of the different cultures that we have here at school. We do have, of course, a mix of the local Malawians. We have a huge Indian community as well. In fact, I won't just say Indian, let's say the Indian subcontinent. We have people from Pakistan, we have Indians, we have Bangladeshis, we have Sri Lankans. We also have a few Chinese, Taiwanese. We have people from Syria. We have people from, I'm losing the countries now, from different parts of Africa as well. Apart from Malawi, we have Zimbabweans, Zambians. So when we first came here, it took a lot of digesting to do in terms of so many cultures coming together. But of course, what tends to happen in a school this old, this school is more than 50 years old. And I think as schools, we generally tend to stick to, we conform to uniformity. And I think that also had been going on for a really long time. But in the last few years, in any part of the world, I think we can agree that there has been a shift in terms of the traditional kind of uniformity that maybe all of us have gone through when we were in school or even before. And that with the advent of the internet and our smartphones, with everyone having access to everything in the world, every school has become a melting pot of sorts of different cultures. And plus, when you put teenagers into the mix, they themselves are unique on their own and coming from different backgrounds, different cultures. When you look at it, it's really exciting and it's really scary, because at some point or the other, I'm sure we as teachers, we stand back and say, what am I going to do with this? But it's good that we're asking the question, because that means we want to find the answer. So a quick definition of multiliteracy, multicultural literacy. This is the nicest one that I found, the most appropriate one that I found on the internet. It's about 1, understanding, and 2, appreciating both the parallels as well as differences between the customs, the beliefs, the values of our culture and that of another as well. Now, it seems so simple to say, yeah, that's it. You have to understand and appreciate. But we know that it isn't such an easy task. Especially in India, I think we all pride ourselves for the rich culture that we have. And I'm sure all of us can think back on at least a bunch of incidents where as children or as teenagers or even as adults, we have interacted with people from backgrounds different from ours, from different cultures. And we have seen how initially, maybe as very young children, we didn't give it much thought. But then as we grew more aware, and as we listened to more influences from outside, our thoughts begin to change. And somewhere, at some point, we do realize that birds of a feather flock together. Birds of a feather flocking together may not be very wrong, but of course it will become wrong when that same thing leads to prejudices, which are a huge challenge in today's world. The times we are living in, I mean, it really calls for multicultural literacy to be part of daily education. And for that, of course, we as teachers need to acknowledge that there is a need for it. And at some point, we need to start modeling the behavior that we want the children to pick up. Now, we are no longer a society that runs in predictable patterns, the traditional confirmed patterns as far as cultural norms are concerned. I think we're breaking patterns everywhere, and that there is a revival that's happening. Now, when I was thinking about the revival, I thought, okay, maybe what can you call this generation? Something like maybe the Renaissance earlier. But the more I thought of it, I said, actually, no, it's not just the Renaissance. It's a mix of that, as well as the Dark Ages, as well as the Stone Age, as well as modernism, neoclassical, whatever you have. I think the war times, everything. We, at this point, we are living in a world where we are a mix of all the past few centuries. And the reason why we feel that is because we have all this access to all this information from everywhere. So it all depends on what you choose to focus on and what you create as your perspective, which is why now for us as adults itself, it can be a bit overwhelming when we listen to all of these news. I think I no longer want to listen to the usual news like we used to while growing up. If we as adults find it this overwhelming, we can only imagine what children are going through with all of this. And that also coming from their different perspectives themselves. Now, coming back to culture. Now, culture is something very close to all of our hearts. No matter how academic we get or everything, when it comes to culture, we get emotional, but naturally. And culture has always been at the heart of all the changes through the decades and centuries. The only difference now is that this is being documented by anyone with a smartphone, with anyone with a voice. And this documentation has become a very, very powerful tool. And like any tool, it can make or break. Which is why I think the importance comes in to get children to use this tool in the best possible way, something that creates their own identity, at the same time is not destroying somebody else's identity. This is where I feel the need for multicultural literacy comes in, where can we come up with engaging children in skills that they pick up, which help them engaging in dialogue with people with different perspectives, with different values, with different backgrounds. Is it possible? Now,
thank you. Thank you, Rekha. Thank you, Rekha. That was wonderful of coming down to the skilling of children in terms of what skills are required. Thank you for your input. I'm going to move to Ashwini now. Ashwini, you have that little time to complete what you have had to say. And I hope the internet will not trouble you now. Please go ahead.
So too, I think I had earlier spoken about safety skills, mental health literacy, interpersonal skills, legal literacy. In fact, the last one was ecological literacy, which is exactly what Ms. Rekha Mishra ma'am, spoke about. I mean, when she was talking about multicultural literacy, I just thought about this particular metaphor, because every time we speak about multiculturalism, the concept of the melting pot comes into the picture. I recently read an article where they were speaking about, okay, the melting pot of cultures is fine, but how about a salad bowl? What happens in a salad bowl is multiple, ingredients are there. They've all retained their identity, yet they're mixed and they're blending together. So instead of looking at a world where we need to melt and then become part of something larger, yes, of course, that's an option, but also about the salad bowl wherein we retain our identities, yet we are in it together. So I think in a world where, there are so many opportunities of travel and then working in diverse culture, I think E, which is the ecological literacy, is equally important. The other word for that is multiculturalism. I think together with SMILE literacy, the hope and the belief is higher are the chances that we could be preventing violence at the very primary level, and we could be promoting community mental health at the fundamental level. I think with this, I'll stop and maybe we could take more questions, ma'am.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much for those initial thoughts. And we have seen a wide spectrum of literacies that have come to the picture with SMILE and metacognitive literacy and intercultural literacy. I have a question probably to all three of you. Maybe you could take a minute to answer, think through and answer that. While we understand these literacies are important, what do you think would be the challenges in putting it in the form of a curriculum to engage with the younger generation? The need is there, but to convert it into a curriculum and transfer it to children. I mean, what are the challenges that you see, and what do you think we need to keep in mind, at least, even if it is not the challenges? So probably Ashwini, you could answer that, and then we could go to Nayantara and then Rekha.
Sure, ma'am. I'm thinking aloud. I think one of the challenges to impart these skills and competencies is looking at all of this as if it's a topical approach. Topical approach is, let's say in 8th standard, 1 hour, we cannot be speaking about mental health literacy. Or in 10th standard, 1 day, we cannot be speaking about legal literacy. So instead of topical approach to skilling individuals, I think we need to look at it in terms of concentric circle model of teaching and learning. Now, I'm sure all of us remember concentric circles, how there's one small circle and then bigger circles. So what I'm trying to communicate using this concept of concentric circle model is, every year we need to be speaking about it, but then the radius keeps on increasing. For a first standard kid, we need to talk about safety skills, but then that may not be as deeply, as broadly as we would be talking with a 5th standard kid. So I think repeating and revising these concepts, but with increase in radius, I think that has to be the approach in the schools. The other thing is also about how these cannot be taught by a separate teacher. I was also listening to the other the speakers in the previous panel discussion. There were English teachers, there were maths teachers. Now, if all teachers could have all these literacies in their mind and using examples, if they could build in the spirit of wanting to learn these the literacies, I think that would be a job well done, than saying, okay, separately we'll have these periods and then we are going to build in the culture of imbibing these new literacies.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful point that you made on using the analogy of concentric circles and not looking at it as types. Nayantara, would you like to throw some light on the challenges in, that little experiment that you shared on how to put it in the form of a curriculum? It could be just a thought that, your views on that.
Absolutely. I think I really enjoyed listening to Ashwini's idea of concentric circles, because that's exactly what you need to do with metacognition as well. It's not something that happens, as she said, in 8th grade or 10th grade. It's something that you can foster right from the start. And it's not just limited to a school setting. You can even do that as a parent at home. You can ask your child, how well do you think you're prepared in this exam? And why do you think you're so well prepared? Or why do you think you're so terribly prepared? And these kind of questions actually also affect other areas like test anxiety. If there's a student struggling with test anxiety, you know why they're struggling with it, because they feel underprepared or they simply haven't studied well enough. So these are something that are related, and it cannot be isolated. And you cannot say, hey, let's teach metacognition at 8th standard as one particular topic and just forget about it for the rest of the school career. That it doesn't work that way. It's something that you need to
that was a great insight. I think what I understand from both your the points that you have raised is the kind of questions that we ask our students is crucial. It's not just the curriculum, the subject, but the way in which we question them and what we make them think. Look at your own self and how you're analyzing will help them problem solve better. Thank you, Nayantara, for highlighting the importance of floodlighting our own thought processes. Thank you for that. Rekha, I liked the point that you said about modeling our own behavior to teach intercultural literacy. How I behave in class, what kind of behaviors I model as a teacher becomes absolutely crucial for the child to learn on how to deal with conflicts or how to engage difference of opinions, how to accept difference of opinion, and so on and so forth, how to be respectful to another individual who is different from me. I think, how do we bring in this concept into the curriculum? Rekha, your thoughts on that? Rekha, are you there? Ashwini or Nayantara, could you take that question?
Certainly. I can go ahead.
Yeah, please go.
So I think when integrating this into the curriculum, first of all, like I said during the presentation, I think it's just one question, but this one question holds so much magnitude. So it's not very difficult to actually integrate it into the classroom. We just have to ask these questions repeatedly to students all through their school career. And I don't see the barrier or something that's holding us behind in doing so.
Thank you. I think I will now ask our moderator to look at the questions that have come online, because I think the audience have raised a lot of questions. So over to Dr. Anshika, who will come over here and read out some of the questions that are raised by our audience. Ma'am, please come.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think that this session has truly made us aware that how literacy can cross the bars from its traditional roots to new understandings, and marking new trends for the generation now and the upcoming generation. So as Padma ma'am, also one of the speakers in the previous session, she rightly said And I loved her phrase that learning can best happen in communities. And in this session also, as we are proceeding further, we are learning new ways, new methodologies, including the real world experiences. I have some questions from the audience, which I would like to take up. I personally have many questions if time permits. Okay. So one of the question from the audience is, when a classroom has about 50 to 60 students, it becomes difficult for a teacher to nurture the timid ones in the class. Now, although the norm says that there should be about 30 to 35 students max, this is generally not followed. How do you nurture all the learners in the class under such circumstances? If anybody of you could take the question.
So maybe, I would like to bring in the concept of growth mindset here. These are challenging times where the manner in which children are learning, sometimes paying individual attention is difficult. And especially, I think Kaushiki, is asking about how do we nurture the timid ones in the class. Now, there is this, a psychologist by name Carol Dweck. She speaks about how there are fundamentally two types of mindset: fixed mindset and growth mindset. Now, yes, there are subjects, yes, there are different subjects, and each child might have difficulty with particular subject. There are these diverse issues, but fundamentally, if we could nurture growth mindset in students, growth mindset is a belief that my abilities can develop provided I learn and practice. That's the fundamental difference. Fixed mindset is, this is my ability and that's it. Growth mindset is, my abilities can develop. If we could only nurture that one, ability in a child, the growth mindset, then maybe whatever be the challenges, either in learning or through their life, maybe it's easier to deal with. So as a foundation, I feel we need to be promoting growth mindset. And with that, we could also be addressing, children with timid nature, children who hesitate to open up. I think we need to nurture this spirit.
May I add?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, no, to add to what Ms. Ashwini was saying, in fact, I had just noted down about growth mindset. When in a class that huge with 50, 60 students, along with the growth mindset, it all depends on the teacher. So I think this is where comes in the importance of training our teachers that regularly. Because yes, a class of 50 to 60 is overwhelming, but if your teacher is up to the task, and if she has or he has had that much experience with these students, they know who are the quieter ones. They know who are the ones that need that extra attention from you. Of course, it's a time-taking process, but over the time, with the teacher being involved, I think it can subtly be done. It's a big task, but somewhere a start can be made.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such a simple, a simple explanation with such a big meaning of growth mindset. Ability to have that. Thank you so much. The next question comes from the audience, that in a hybrid classroom, it's a challenge to cater the learning needs of the students for the teacher. Suggest some ways to make the learning sessions more productive elaborately. So, any of you can take, yes, she has appreciated the idea of which was put up by Ashwini ma'am. So if you would like to take it first, ma'am.
Sure, ma'am. I'm thinking of two possible ideas. The first one is in a hybrid classroom, especially where half students are in class, the other half or in the, the online sessions. I think to spend some time getting to know the individual profile of each student should therefore become mandatory for all the teachers. Imagine it's a class of 50. Of course, it's time consuming, but it's worth investing time. I wouldn't even call it we need to spend time. I think it's an investment of our time to get to learn about each student's, strength profile. I think that's the first one, so that students can then relate, with the teacher in a much better manner. Secondly, I think these are times where to an extent, students are becoming equipped with online classes, but not our families. I'm aware of some situations where the child is sitting in front of, let's say the mobile phone. The dad is yelling in the background, saying, "It's my phone. I have given you, you concentrate." So what I'm saying is, as we are empowering our students with online, the learning, I think we must spend some time in also empowering our families, because the atmosphere of the learning in an online can only be facilitated provided there is a systemic support to the child. That's what I'm thinking. One, to make it a strength-based learning. It is hybrid, but then an emphasis on strength-based learning, understanding the existing strength of the students. Secondly, we need to empower the very system that the child is part of to facilitate online learning. I think we need to really empower families also to accommodate the child's need to learn in an online environment.
Thank you so much. I think we all are witnessing this challenge, especially in these times. Other question I would actually like to ask Rekha ma'am, that you were talking about some multicultural, your journey about multicultural teaching group and all. So I would like to ask you that what is one challenge that you faced, if you can share with us, which was the turning point in your life to go further? Rekha ma'am?
I think there's some problem.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. You're audible.
All right. Okay, I do recall one tiny incident, maybe not a turning point, but it was something that made me change my lesson plan for that day, at least. There was a lesson I had for my year 7. It was about giving instructions, writing. When it comes to English, we have a whole session for writing instruction to see how well a child can give out instructions. Now, I didn't want them to write it out, so I had suggested that they make videos of themselves. I said, teach me something. I told them, teach me something that you know. It could be about baking cupcakes. It could be about fixing the wheel of your car. It could be football. Just teach me something that I know, make a short video. And what I thought was, it was working wonderfully, because within a week, I had even my laziest student in class giving me 2 videos, about one on football and one more about, I forget what, but he gave me 2 videos. So I thought it was going really well for someone who didn't want to write down instructions. They were giving me instructions, they were teaching me. But in all of this, I had one girl who kept postponing submitting her assignment, and she was very reluctant to tell me why. And finally, I had to sit her down. I said, it's been quite a while. I need to grade you on this assignment. When will you give me one? That was when she sat down and told me she cannot make a video for me because she said, my culture won't allow me to come on camera. Now, for me, I thought it was a small thing. I mean, we all use our phones, we all take selfies. So it was a very big generalization I had made. So I had to tweak it, and that was the only reason that was holding her back, saying, I can't come on camera, my mother won't allow it. So then, of course, I said, it's a lesson on giving instructions. I don't mind if you don't give me a video on it. Write it down for me. Teach me something by writing it down for me. So that was the point when I came in and I realized that I have to take in these small considerations, which we tend to overlook. It might be a small thing. Maybe if she had shared it with the rest of the class, they might have laughed. But it was very important for her. She didn't want to. So these are subtle things that we tend to overlook when it comes to cultural differences, which I agree we can't all be aware of all the time. But I think we have to keep our eyes and ears open wide to note that there are these things and we cannot take them for granted.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your experience.
Thank you.
I mean, for a teacher, this is the lifelong learning itself, with the experience and all. So we have a lot of questions, but I think we are running out of the time and we have to go ahead with the next session. Thank you so much, Nayantara ma'am, Ashwini ma'am, and Rekha ma'am for your presence. And trust me, this was a real learning, and especially in these times of pandemic where we have to, maintain that balance between online and offline teaching, lifelong, along with lifelong learning. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Anshika. I think this
Thank you.
for the entire discussion is about the centrality of the role of a teacher, and that's leading to our very beautifully into our next session on how prepared are we as teachers to take these skills and transfer these skills to our children in the school setup. So we are really thankful to all the three of you for giving your time. I know one is from the US, one is from Malawi, and one is from Bangalore. Thank you so much.